Over the past 5 years, I've invested nearly $30,000 in woodworking tools. Some I couldn't do my job without, and others that have mostly just collected dust. If you're new to woodworking, you know it can be overwhelming to sift through all the online marketing and know where to invest your tool budget. So in this video, instead of giving you yet another list of tools to go buy, I'm going to share 10 principles that will guide you in curating a collection of tools that you'll love and rely on in almost every project. Let's get into it. Number 1, before you ever buy anything, consider what you want to make. Now, this may seem obvious, but this guideline will prevent you from buying tools you'll never use. Don't purchase a tool just because it looks cool on YouTube. If you don't have an immediate project for it or can't use it in your current work, it's not the right time to buy it, if you should buy it at all. In today's world of online shopping, with companies like Amazon offering overnight shipping, it's incredibly tempting to buy something as soon as you see it on screen. However, if you can't look at your project and think, this would be much easier, more accurate, or safer with that tool, it's better to wait. Here's a perfect example. I bought a massive lathe secondhand years ago thinking I'd dive into wood turning and make full-size table legs for clients, and to date, I've never used it for myself or any customer. On the other hand, my mini lathe is ideal for crafting pins as client gifts, Christmas ornaments, and other small items that I actually make and sell. The big lathe was a waste of time and money, while the small one has been an excellent investment. Number 2, buy once, cry once does not always apply. You've probably heard the phrase buy once, cry once before. It suggests that you'll avoid frustration and disappointment if you invest in the new or better model you truly want. I've followed this principle for several purchases, and it has generally served me well. However, it's easy to misuse this phrase as justification for buying an unnecessarily fancy version of something that you don't actually need. Take this Jessam doweling jig, for example. It's built like a NASA-engineered piece of equipment. Solid aluminum construction, smooth fittings and knobs, and zero play between parts. It's exactly what you'd expect from Jessam, which is easily my favorite woodworking tool company. But here's the catch. I don't use it often enough to justify owning a $250 doweling jig. Once I started woodworking professionally, it made more sense to upgrade to the Festool Domino for its speed, repeatability, and accuracy. As a result, this poor guy has been sitting unused in its box. So I suppose you could say that I've still only cried once, but it's because I now have $250 tied up in a tool that could have easily been replaced by a $35 one. Number 3, buy a great track saw before buying a professional table saw. This Grizzly 1023 RLX table saw is a 3 horsepower cabinet style saw with cast iron trunnions. It's a fantastic saw and perfect for my needs. However, it's a $2,500 investment. So if you're just starting to build your workshop, you could stretch that $2,500 much further by buying a job site table saw like the DeWalt 10-inch saw my friend Tim bought and a Makita track saw. And there are even less expensive track saws that would likely serve you well until it's time to upgrade. The key here is to opt for greater versatility. These two different tools provide a much wider cutting capacity together for far less money than the single larger investment. Who cares if your shop would look cooler with a saw stop in the middle of it if you could do more by having a broader tool set, right? Number 4, pick a power tool battery system before picking your handheld power tools. Don't make my mistake. I started with DeWalt, somehow acquired a rigid drill, and now have an array of Makita tools along with their chargers. Here's the truth. In the world of handheld power tools, most brands make great products that spin, cut, and oscillate. You'll likely be happy with whichever brand you choose. What will matter when you're working on a project is whether you're able to power as many of them as you need to at the same time. And remember, these hefty lithium-ion batteries can be as expensive, if not more so, than the tools they power. So invest in the battery system you prefer, then buy the tools that you need from that brand. Number 5, you probably don't need an expensive router table. Now, I love my router table. It's a Jessam Ultimate Excel 2 with all the bells and whistles. Table, fence, hand crank, master lift, and those sweet spring-loaded hold-down guide thingies. But here's the thing, it's one of the priciest tools in my shop. While it's worth it for me to have this buy once, cry once version, I realize most woodworkers aren't professional furniture makers relying on their tools for a living. If you're a hobbyist watching this video, keep that in mind. Here's the reality of fancy router tables. While all those accessories are nice, you only need what you actually use. For me, I rarely run anything along the fence. I mostly use it to keep the dust collection close to the bit. Why? Because 90% of the time, I'm using bearing-based bits, so I don't need to guide the workpiece with a fence. So what does this mean in practice? Well, I probably could have gotten by for a long time with just a really flat table made from a couple pieces of plywood or MDF laminated together, plus one of these inset router lifts like the Craig, Rockler, or even the same Jessam lift, all for a lot less money. Number 6, you probably do need more than one router. Now, I wish I had invested in routers earlier in my woodworking career. For the first couple of years, I was hesitant to use them, fearing I'd either ruin my work or injure myself. However, routers are one of the fastest and most accurate ways to accomplish woodworking tasks. Once you overcome the initial learning curve and build a decent collection of reliable bits, the possibilities really expand in your mind. To start, I'd recommend getting a trim router with its corresponding plunge base. If that's all you can afford initially, it'll take you far. If your budget allows, I also suggest investing in a full-size router, a 2 to 3.5 horsepower plunge router like those from Makita or Bosch. There are two main reasons for this. First, it opens up a wider range of router bits with half-inch shanks. These can remove more material and allow for larger profiles than quarter-inch shank bits. Second, the extra power lets you reduce RPMs while still making aggressive cuts without burning or chatter, that awful noise you hear when pushing the router too fast through material. Importantly, only buy routers with variable speed control. While most modern routers offer this feature, it's crucial to familiarize yourself with speed control. Each router bit works best at a specific speed, and you should find this information on the packaging or manufacturer's website for both the router and the bits. If you can't find this information, you're likely not buying a reputable brand of router tools. Consider that a bonus tip. Number 7, buy a cheap miter saw and an expensive miter gauge. Now, if you've seen many of my videos, you might think I'm not following this advice. When I built my miter station along this wall, I replaced my DeWalt compound sliding miter saw with this Bosch model. I made this choice for a specific reason. I wanted the sliding action, but needed the saw to back up flush against the wall. My old saw took up 3 feet front to back, including dust collection. However, this is still an expensive saw, and I expect to use it mostly for rough material breakdowns, not finish cuts. A few years ago, there was a debate on YouTube about whether woodworkers even need miter saws, since you can do the same rough breakdown with a jigsaw or a circular saw, both more versatile tools. I recently bought a miter gauge I've been eyeing for a while, and it's going to completely revolutionize my workflow. Most of the finished crosscuts I make are at 90 degrees. When it comes to accuracy, safety, and reducing tear out, my table saw is far more capable of producing a clean, square cut than my miter saw. A miter gauge is also superior for making repeatable cuts on small parts compared to a miter saw. This is especially true considering the limited support around the miter saw's cutting area, between those no hand signs, which can lead to dangerous operations. Finally, with a good miter gauge, you can still make precise, repeatable angled and compound angle cuts on your table saw. Woodworking demands more accuracy and precision than rough or trim carpentry, which is what most miter saws are designed for. My recommendation? Prioritize making precise, tear-out-free cuts with your table saw and miter gauge. Either opt for an inexpensive miter saw or forego one entirely. Number 8, upgrade all of your saw blades. This tip will make you both a happier and safer woodworker. I believe companies are best at making what they primarily sell. Just because something is included with a tool you buy doesn't mean it's the part you want to depend on long term. So that saw blade that came with your table saw or miter saw will definitely cut things, but it will likely not stay as sharp or even necessarily have the best tooth configuration for all your needs. For lower budget upgrades, I definitely recommend the Freud Diablo line of blades as an excellent starting point. These are great blades you can buy from Amazon and big box stores and come in a bunch of different tooth counts. These have carbide teeth that will last a long time on their own, and many carbide tooth blades can even be sharpened or re-tipped if they wear out over time, rather than just replacing the blades. Finding a local company that offers sharpening services is also really valuable, especially if you decide to upgrade to a more expensive brand like CMT or Forest. I've put this Forest Woodworker 2 through the ringer in my past several projects, and at $160, it would be a complete waste to just replace it when I can have it re-tipped for just $40. Number 9. If you can buy a tool that is more specific or more versatile, go with the more versatile one. In this one, I'm going to get really practical. The reality of being new to woodworking is that you probably don't know exactly what you're going to be trying to make from one project to the next. When I was a beginner, I bounced from one interesting idea to the next, from working mostly with plywood to make cabinets to trying to cut dovetails on a few scraps of hardwood I salvaged from a more experienced friend. It's tempting to buy specialized tools that are perfect for the situation at hand. But the beauty of the woodworking craft is that there's always more than one way to get something done. And in my opinion, buying the specialized tool that exists for just that scenario is like using a cheat code, when playing the game and using a more generic tool would ultimately make you a better woodworker and save you money, if not time and frustration. I think the best example of this would be buying something like a Festool domino when you don't have a plunge router. I covered the versatility of plunge routers for things like loose tenon joinery in a different video, which I'll link below. But there's so much more that you can do with a plunge router than just loose tenon joinery. And they're also much less expensive. A simpler example of opting for the more versatile tool would be buying a dovetail saw with very fine teeth and a super thin kerf when you don't have a normal handsaw. I use these Japanese style handsaws, and if I could only have one, I'd much rather have this Ryoba than this Dozuki. The Ryoba has finer offset teeth for cross cuts on one side and longer straight teeth for making rip cuts on the other. It also doesn't have a wide bar on the back side, so the whole blade can fit into the kerf. The trade-off here is that the Dozuki has a thinner blade, and that bar on the top gives it a backbone so it always stays straight during the cut. But the point is that a Ryoba can be taken to far more applications than the Dozuki, despite its specific advantages. Number 10. Prioritize getting a decent planer before buying a jointer. When you do buy a jointer, anything smaller than an 8-inch is likely not worth the investment. Now this one's probably going to get me a lot of comments from folks who are happy with their 48-inch long jointer or compact benchtop model. However, I stand firm on this for a good reason. Most woodworkers who need a jointer are working with lumber longer than around 4 feet, which is the maximum length a 6-inch capacity jointer with a 4-foot bed can accurately mill. And that's because it's challenging to support and move material accurately through the jointer when it's much more than twice as long as either the infeed or outfeed platforms. And I speak from experience here, having owned a 6-inch jointer before upgrading to my 8-inch model. I frequently encountered this limitation, and it was frustrating enough to get me to prioritize the upgrade, and I know several others who would back up this recommendation. Unless your projects exclusively involve very small parts, your money is better spent elsewhere in the short term. There are plenty of alternatives for edge jointing, such as straight rip jigs for the table saw and offset router table fences, and for face jointing, you can use techniques like sleds and shims on a planer. I'd recommend exploring these options or finding a friend or a local connection with a jointer before investing minimum $1,500 in a 6-inch model. An 8-inch jointer will handle most of your milling needs. Interestingly, the no longer than twice the length of the outfeed platform rule doesn't seem to apply as strictly to 8-inch jointers. I've successfully milled 8-foot lengths of material on this 6-foot bed jointer by myself without additional infeed and outfeed support. Though I'd guess milling timber much longer than that would also start causing issues. I would love to hear what your favorite tool buying guideline is, and if you have one to share, just leave it in a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.